this morning I was scrolling Twitter and I wanted to go check out a past tweet from somebody that blocked me. And you know, Twitter used to make it really easy for you to look at blocked tweets. I mean, like you could just open it up in an incognito tab or whatever outside the app.
Can you not do that anymore?
Well, so you used to not be able to do it at all. Elon actually quietly tweaked this a couple of weeks ago, where like
Mm.
you'd open it up and it'd be like, you need to log in Twitter,
Mm.
but you can still only see one tweet. So like I was able to see the one tweet from this person I blocked, but I couldn't see what he replied to. I couldn't see any context. And another thing, and I don't understand why we can't get this feature back. This is a great feature. When you retweet something and then somebody likes it, you can't see whose likes you've brought to that tweet. Like
You can't?
I no,
Oh, that was a big one.
you get a notification for it, but like you when you click on the notification, it doesn't take you to a list of the people that have liked the tweet that you retweeted, which I always like to see because number one, like I like to see who's enjoying the same content as me, but also like I like to see who I'm bringing in. Like if I'm retweeting something, with my 10,000 followers, I'm putting that out there in the world for people to enjoy. I just like to see who I'm interacting with.
Now, I always had a question about that feature, and I guess I'll never know because it's gone now. But if I retweet something and you retweet something and someone that follows both of us, whose retweet do they see?
It's a great question. I actually don't really understand that because you cannot see the tweet more than once in your timeline.
Correct. And you
It's
never
not like
see
if-
multiple people
Yeah.
retweeting a tweet.
Right.
It doesn't
Exactly.
say Bird Lawyer and Taylor retweeted
Right.
this.
I don't know.
So like how does it credit? Maybe that's why they wiped it, because like how do you even know that now here's the other thing though. So if someone likes that tweet, even though I retweeted it and someone likes it when they see it, but you also retweeted it and they follow you, that doesn't give you a notification? I don't know.
No, I don't think it does. But now we'll never know.
We'll never know. But as far as the app and what we miss about it before the days that Elon took over, I mean, certainly stability, I think, is maybe the number one thing. It was predictable. I knew
it was pretty stable.
Workflow wise and what I was clicking on, I knew how the app would react. I mean, it was extremely stable. And now it's as wild card as it gets. I have no idea what this app's going to do at any 1 second.
Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at RealBirdLawyer. Still, for now. Here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Wit on Twitter. Taylor M. Wit on Threads. Remember Threads?
Barely. I threaded twice, and those would be the last times I ever threaded.
I never threaded, and I think I followed you, and I followed friend of the show, Randy Gisarely, and I followed fellow Bird of War, Casey Puerto Rican. Caca! And beyond that, I don't have any memory or knowledge of who I followed on Threads. So, it is what it is. Moving on. We've got a great show for you guys. Before we get to that, check out our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Promo code Sunny, SUNNY. Matching deposit up to $100. You know the drill. Speaking of fantasy, our leagues are finalized.
Yeah, we've got a great list of 16 participants in Cutthroat, 12 participants in Redraft, and 12 participants in Dynasty. It is going to be a bloodbath.
Expect those invitations to go out here in the next day or two. I know we've been promising that for a while, but we actually did do the work. Big shout out to Taylor for organizing that and putting it all together. Can't wait to get those drafts set up. We've got a great show for you guys this week. We've got news. We've got a little Ask Ourselves Anything. And we've got our Ask Blast from the past. And boy, I mean, the Chiefs are 9-1. They took their first loss last week, the 2003 Chiefs against those dastardly Cincinnati Bengals. Can they get back on track at home on Monday Night Football against the 3-7 Oakland Raiders? We'll find out. But first, well, DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Titans, buddy. 2 years, $26 million. up to $32 million with incentives. We learned from Albert Breer that the Chiefs did have an offer in place earlier this offseason when they were discussing a trade with the Arizona Cardinals before he was released, and that would have paid DeAndre Hopkins $4 million base salary plus up to $10 million in incentives. That would have been in new money, but obviously that's not really close to what he got from the Titans. Jeremy Fowler confirms that the Chiefs, and specifically Andy Reid, were in contact with Nook, could not offer him a, quote, competitive contract. I know that you were on this train for a long time, so how are you holding up?
I mean, I'm on the train of adding talent to a extremely talented roster. I've said for a while that, he was not a necessity, but he would have been very fun. It would have added a dimension to the offense that they don't currently have, and that is a premium wide receiver. I mean, by all accounts, look, this is not Julio Jones last year. This is not someone that is at the end of their rope. According to pretty much every consensus with preseason rankings and how he's viewed among the NFL, he is an elite top 5, 6, 7, wherever range you want to put him, wide receiver in the NFL. And of course, you should want to add that guy to your team. And given just the construction of the Chiefs and the pressure to go out there and win every game and win another Super Bowl, yeah, it sucks, but he didn't go to a team that means anything to me at all. He is not going to stand in the way of the Chiefs. The Titans are going to be a nothing to nobody, and that's fine.
You did mention, you mentioned Julio Jones, former Titan. I was reminded last week that Randy Moss also had a brief tenure with the Titans at the end of his career.
Andre Johnson.
Is where, all-time great wide receivers go to die. So I hope that he has a good season. If he does, it's not going to affect the Chiefs because the Titans are just they're just not a threat to us. They're just not.
No, they're fine, and they might win the West. The South they won't, but even if they do anything, they're still not a threat to the Chiefs. It's fine.
Sure, they're not going to do anything to the Chiefs. It's a bummer, but obviously if he's going to end up on an AFC team, it's hard to come up with a team less threatening than the Titans, so that's great. Speaking of Andy and the recruiting texts, a little nugget from Drew Tranquil, the new linebacker for the Chiefs. He says Andy personally texted him the morning he was going to make his decision and said, think red, think Super Bowls, which is hilarious to me. I mean, Andy is he's become quite the little recruiter out here. I mean, this is a 64-year-old man who's out here texting people, think red, think Super Bowls. And it worked.
Yeah, he's the best. Everything he does is golden. And I mean, just imagining him working the recruiting trails, which he does not have to do. And it just means so much to him. He's so invested in this team and in the franchise. And I love the guy to death. We're as lucky to have Andy Reid as we are to have Patrick Mahomes. And I do not say that lightly. I don't say that. I mean, I am as big of a Mahomes boy as there is, but Andy is incredible and has completely turned this franchise around.
He's the dude. On the Chris Jones beat, we were hopeful that last week that we would have Chris Jones news. We waited a day after Quentin Williams signed to give the Chiefs a day to sign Chris Jones. Didn't work out for us. We're recording this again on our usual time on Thursday night. It's July 20th. Rookies and quarterbacks reported to training camp yesterday. Veterans check in tomorrow, Friday, the 21st. They're practicing on Saturday. Chris Jones still doesn't have a new deal. We've heard nothing so far to indicate that it won't get done. Andy said this week that, he may miss some time in camp. I mean, didn't even really say it that way. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but basically we hope he's going to be here, pretty quickly or something like that. But we haven't heard that there's any reason why it wouldn't get done. And to the contrary, we've heard plenty of reports saying both sides want it to happen. We're working towards a resolution. And yet here we are on the eve of camp and he doesn't have a new deal. What gives?
Well, let's make sure. Let's check Twitter. It's 9:48. Dan Snyder sells the Commanders. Colts have terrible uniforms. Nope, nothing about Chris Jones at all. It's shocking. It's just something that, given the narrative around this extension, that's what's so shocking. If it was a Saquon Barkley deal, if both sides were jabbing at each other, if it was Chris Jones of 3 years ago.
Right.
We knew that whole time that was going to be going into camp.
And we knew he wasn't going to be there, and he said he wasn't going to be there, and he was tweeting cryptic stuff about,
sure. Well, join the NFL club there. But
sure,
this has just felt like he already signed it with the way that he's been talking and the way the Chiefs have been talking. And then we all knew money-wise that Quinn Williams was going to be a big, big dominant. That once that contract fell, basically, the way I understood the situation to be was that they had everything inked out in his contract, ready to go, other than a final dollar amount, and they were just ready to give him one more dollar than Quinn Williams or whatever, $1 million, who cares, and sign that dotted line and be done with it. That was how I understood the negotiations to go, which is that Chris Jones wants to be buried a Chief. The Chiefs want him here. Everyone, he thanked Brett Veach and the SB's speech and all this stuff. Like, it's very hunky-dory and positive and happy. And yet, here we are, the eve before veterans report to training camp. Now, here's the other thing. Chris Jones could report tomorrow without the extension. It's an extension.
Sure, of course, of course.
So, like, it doesn't have to, there's no deadline extension the way there was for the running backs on Monday, where there was an actual franchise tag deadline that passed at 4:00 on Monday, all that stuff. There's no deadline here. But just for peace of mind and just to get it, it's a happy occasion to extend a franchise monster like Chris Jones, a Super Bowl champion, all the, the great things that he's meant to the community.
Pillar of the team.
Yes, that's something to celebrate. That's something that you would think the Chiefs would want to just knock it out and be able to have training camp without the media asking, oh, what's the Chris Jones story? But I don't know. It'll be, we're recording this late Thursday night. It's going to be very interesting how Chris Jones treats tomorrow, whether he does show up, whether he doesn't, whether the team says, yeah, he's not here, but we're close, or just what. Hell, maybe by tomorrow morning, maybe they'll extend him and this will all be old news by the time everybody listens to it. But it's very, very surprising.
Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow, but we should devote a special segment in our news segment here to news from training camp, because it's here. And I tweeted this, we've been talking about it, but it really feels like we won the Super Bowl like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and in fact, it was almost 6 months ago. And here we are starting training camp. The first game of the season is 50 days away. We're going to be there at Arrowhead 50 days from now, less than 2 months from now, watching the Chiefs hang the banner and kick it off against the Detroit Lions. Rookies and quarterbacks get in their first practice yesterday. Let's hit the highlights here. Starting with injury news, like we typically do in season, probably a good place to start. Deshaun Wharton is the only Chief to begin camp on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. He continues to rehab his ACL injury. That's good news, because Isaiah Pacheco, for like a couple hours the other day, and this was such a brief window of time that like I wasn't actively checking Twitter. I was working and like doing my job for once, and I went like 6 hours without checking Twitter. And when I got back, I accidentally flipped over to the For You tab, and it was like all these tweets about Deneric Prince, and I was like, well, okay, let me get caught up on the news of the day, because something had to happen here. For like 6 hours, it was reported that Isaiah Pacheco not only would start on the PUP list, but that he might miss like a good chunk of regular season games, and instead he's out there and looks great.
Yeah, there was a misreporting about the difference between preseason PUP or camp PUP and the regular season PUP.
That's an amateur mistake by whoever.
And you know how these tweets work. Somebody amateur mistakes it, and then it gets amplified by somebody. And next thing you know, sleeper notification says Isaiah Pacheco might miss the first 6 weeks of the regular season. And I got that notification because I still get the sleeper notifications. Sure. And I immediately was like, well, he is coming back from some surgeries. Maybe that's not going as well. There are 4 veteran running backs still out there on the free agent market. Like, I wasn't even really super worried about it. Like, it is what it is. He's a 7th round draft pick. I know he's been great, but like, this team should not be relying on a guy like Isaiah Pacheco. He should
not going to make or break your season.
Yes, he should be a luxury, not a necessity. But yes, it was certainly just a misunderstanding of what the PUP even was and which list he was maybe going to join, and he didn't end up even, like you said, he's not even on the preseason pup list, so it's no big deal. But yeah, it was a little interesting there for a couple of harrowing hours while you were working.
Not only is he not on the pup list, but like by all accounts, he looks completely healthy and
Jacked.
like better and more explosive than he
He looks like a
last year,
linebacker.
which is hilarious because I mean, obviously, like the guy was a seventh round rookie, like you said, out of Rutgers. I mean, we're talking about a guy that, you know, if you take a guy out of Alabama or Clemson or, you know, Georgia, whoever, you know, those guys are going to be pretty close to NFL ready. I mean, like, there's not a whole lot you can do to get those guys in better shape. They're getting paid literally like probably millions of dollars at this point to play football, just as they are in the NFL. Not so with the 7th-round rookie running back from Rutgers. So it's great to see that in addition to being able to rehab very successfully from those couple of surgeries that he had, that he also somehow like became fitter and is literally in the best shape of his life. Incredible.
Well, and he played through these, you know, these injuries. He's clearly already tough. He runs like a chicken with his head cut off. Like he's got a hilarious mindset about him. I mean, hell, we talked about how last year in camp, he said he's going to take a grown man's job. Like he just approaches this whole NFL thing with a really, you know, aggressive mindset. And yeah, he must approach the weight room that way too, because I'll tell you, 4 years at Rutgers or 1 offseason in the Chiefs training room, I mean, night and day difference. He looks like he's ready to plow out there.
In other fitness related news, and this was probably the number one news item of this week, Rashee Rice, the Chiefs' 2nd-round rookie wide receiver, was out on the field and he was just puking all over the place. And he said to reporters, to be honest with y'all, I don't mind puking. That just means I'm working as hard as I can so that I won't puke anymore and will be ready for the games. The hottest takes on this one have probably already been fired off. This was the number one Chiefs news story of yesterday, the first day of training camp. But give me your measured, marinated take on this.
It is a quote from Andy Reid from May 8th, where he said, to the question, what have you seen from Rashee Rice so far? Yeah, strong. Kind of the things you saw on tape. He's got to make sure he gets his running in. That position, we run them like crazy. So he's got to get that part of him taken care of, but you can see the strength in his route, et cetera, et cetera. So he identified this, I think, pretty quickly that, yes, while he has a, you know, exciting skill set and we're going to use him and all that stuff, like this is a whole different deal than it was at SMU. This is run. And yeah, I mean, I liked when Rashee Rice said, I know if I'm puking, that means I'm working hard. Like that's a funny take on it. That definitely means that he's not, I don't think he's concerned about it. It was hot out there and it's the first day of rookie NFL camp. Like that has got to be the hardest day.
Andy Reid's training camp. Yeah.
In a football player's life, that might be the hardest day. And so, yeah, I think it's fine and fun.
It's funny because I mean, at least they're upfront about it, and nobody's like trying to. I mean, it's good that he's being lighthearted about it. You know, I'm sure people remember last year Treylon Burks, the 1st-round draft pick for the Titans, was having all kinds of conditioning issues in camp, and they just didn't address it. Mike Vrabel was very irritated about it, and Treylon Burks, I don't think, ever spoke to the media really about it. Certainly not in the way that Rashee Rice did, where he's joking about puking all over the field and how it means he's working hard. So, like, I don't know. I think that's probably better than, if it was a really serious issue, you know, maybe they'd be a little bit more guarded about it, but it'll be interesting to see how he kind of progresses.
Doesn't that just kind of feel like the New England versus Kansas City approach to that type of stuff? Like,
well, yeah,
by New England, obviously Tennessee, but like
that
just feels like how they handle stuff like that versus the Chiefs, who empower players, and Andy Reid's more open about that stuff. And I just think that's worth noting.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of the wide receivers, the standout performance from the first day of camp was UDFA wide receiver Nico Remigio. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Nico, I think.
Nico?
Higher.
What do you think about Remigio? Remigio? Remigio.
No clue in the world. Remigio.
Remigio. Sure. I don't know. This is a tough one. We don't have a pronunciation guide in front of us. He caught at least 5 balls at practice, 2 touchdowns, made the official social media account highlight reel with a leaping grab in the end zone. Just a couple of notes about Nico.
Oh, Remigio. Yeah.
Interesting. Where'd you find that?
From the California Golden Bears Athletics page
beautiful.
on their athletes. Nico Remigio.
Good. Well, we have the correct pronunciation for you. There's probably people on podcasts all over Chiefs Kingdom mispronouncing this guy's name, including us, for about 2 minutes. He's an undrafted free agent from Fresno State, so Jace Frost is a big fan of his. Big time fan of Nico. Dane Brugler ranked him as his wide receiver 65, so no scouting report. Dane only does scouting reports in the top 50 prospects at each position, because that guy, what a slacker.
Yeah, right. Only 50.
But he is 5'9", 187, relative athletic score 4.89. I did notice, and I don't think you're going to get this information anywhere else. I did deep dive on this. The relative athletic score does contain a significantly different and worse number for his 20-yard split. It says on his relative athletic score, and I don't know where those numbers are sourced from, 2.66 for the 20-yard split, and Dane Brugler has him at a 2.61 in the draft guide. That doesn't seem like a huge difference, but if you change that one number, and again, for those who have not listened to the show or don't know what relative athletic score is all about, it's a percentile ranking. So we're talking about, speed, burst, size, agility. That's all baked into a percentile score. And so a relative athletic score 48 or 4.89 is a 48th percentile wide receiver. Not great. That means he's below average. If you change that one number for his 20-yard split from 2.66, which is what relative athletic score has, to 2.61, which is what Dane has, it changes his relative athletic score from a 4.89 to a 5.46. He goes from being below average.
That's a huge bump.
To being like above average. And not only, he goes from being not fast to having at least like average, above average-ish speed. So it's just a little bit interesting. Something I noticed when I was going through Nico's stats today. So it'll be fun. Obviously UDFA on the first day of training camp, you can't read too much into that, but if nothing else, it's good to have him as part of the competition out there.
Yeah, and Pat tweeted the eye emoji with a touchdown pass to Mr. Remigio. And look, the wide receiver room, despite not picking up DeAndre Hopkins, is too deep for this guy to make the 53. There's just no, unless there are 3 injuries between now and training camp, or between now and the season. He's a fun training camp story. Hopefully he can show out enough maybe in the preseason that another team likes how he looks when Patrick Mahomes throws to him, but then they try and get their idiot quarterback to throw to him, and it's not doesn't go nearly as well. That happens.
There's a guy in New Orleans now. There is. Probably would love to throw balls.
He probably loved throwing to him back in college. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So
right. Exactly.
So that's Mr. Remigio. Hopefully he at least has a fun time while it lasts in Chiefs camp.
We promised a mailbag question, because we haven't answered anybody's mailbag questions in a while. It's the off season. This is the time that we should be swimming in mailbag content. But we've had the Ask Blast going on, and we've had like things to talk about every week, which is
there have been events, Chiefs events every week.
Sure, like we haven't been super starved for content like we normally would be in a longer, more difficult off season than the one where we won the Super Bowl and everything good happened, and we're doing like a double victory lap because we didn't get one during COVID and so on and so forth. But we've got a mailbag question from our King of the Birds Award, Jordan Screen. Maybe it's just me, but as I've been watching quarterback, Mahomes is often seen talking to Nagy before EB. Could be that EB just didn't get as much screen time, or it could be something more. What if Nagy gets more out of Mahomes than EB did? Could we see an even higher level of performance from Mahomes?
Now, the reason that I harvested this from our Discord, by the way, if you'd like to join our Discord and ask questions like Jordan did here to us, please hit me up on Twitter and I will send you an invite to that. However, you and I, as we were watching quarterback together while you were in town and we were going through those episodes, we noted this ourselves that
we did.
That Nagy had a lot of screen time, or at least
Tons. Yeah,
seemed
tons.
like, even if it wasn't like screen time, like anytime Pat was seen on the sidelines talking to someone, it was usually Nagy before anybody
Yes.
else. And I think Jordan's spot on. I think that there is a potential here. We do not know anything about what was not on the show, or I mean, we try and pay attention to all this type of stuff, but it seems like Nagy and Mahomes, if anything, get along great. Even if it's not, even if still EB was there more and all that stuff behind the scenes, at the end of the day, it does seem like the relationship between Matt Nagy and Mahomes before Nagy was elevated this year to offensive coordinator was solid. They were on the same page. They were talking to each other every play, every game. I think Jordan's spot on
here. It's an interesting observation that obviously we made when we were watching the show too. And I think that like it's obviously always hard when you're watching a show that's been curated and edited for TV. But like we watched all of the games, and obviously there were multiple points over the last 4 years when Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator where we saw him and Patrick Mahomes get into it on the sideline. And I will tell you, I watched every game the Chiefs played last year, and I never saw him get into Matt Nagy's face. Like, it didn't seem like they ever really had any arguments. And it seemed like, even when there's a moment during the Super Bowl episode, the last episode of Quarterback, where, after the Sky Moore touchdown, where the Chiefs were lined up in the wrong formation, where, obviously it's a touchdown and it's in the Super Bowl. So, like, nobody's going to give you a super hard time about that. But, like, that's the first thing that Nagy says to Mahomes when he comes up the sideline is, like, you guys were lined up wrong. And Pat's like, yeah, I know. I know. That's why, I knew it was cover zero, and that's why I motioned him. And, like, I knew touchdown, it. But, like, bro. it's such a positive interaction for, and obviously there's, again, the result of the play was a success. So, like, it's not like Nagy's going to get on his ass about it, but, like, it was just a very professional, like, hey, yeah, I know. Thanks for pointing that out. I know we took
they were both laughing. Like, it was positive. Right? It wasn't even just professional. Exactly. It was like they enjoyed the fact that they went out there, they screwed up, but they adjusted on the fly and they made something good out of something bad. And it was the type of interaction that you would hope that if two guys are on the same page, the type of exchange they would have. It was great to see.
It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out during the season. Appreciate the question, Jordan. I can't wait to rewatch Quarterback. I know you are making, if you want to plug it again, a super cut of all of the Patrick Mahomes bits, which tell us how you can get that.
Yeah, I have released that. That is on my Twitter page. I usually pin our episode tweets for my my pinned tweet, but if you just look for, I call it QB1. So if you look for my name and QB1 on Twitter, you can find a Google Drive link that has all 8 episodes already cut up that took out all the cousin stuff and all the Mariota stuff and is just left with Patrick Mahomes highlights. Really good way to just get to the meat and potatoes of the whole show, what everybody wants. Now, look, I got a lot of feedback on Reddit specifically because I posted there too about people in Chiefs Kingdom loving the Kirk Cousins parts of the show. They wanted me to just cut Mariota and leave Cousins in. And like, I'm not into it, guys. I'm sure some of you listening are like, oh, he was so likable and all this stuff. And like, look, I get it. He does seem like a nice dude, but it was so uninteresting to me. It was just, and especially because I knew that I was being deprived of Patrick Mahomes time when I was watching.
Yes.
Like, if they had come out with that show and it had been, Cousins, Mariota, and Carr, then I bet I would have come away with it saying, well, just give me all the cousin stuff and cut out the other two guys or whatever. But like, yes, when I know that the other option is Patrick Mahomes, why would I want to watch Kirk Cousins? It just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, now, and did you in the supercut, did you include like Pat's family, like Brittany? Is Brittany in the supercut?
Okay. Everything.
Anything related to Mahomes. Pat.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
So in order to leave the Kirk Cousins stuff in, and I don't want to be a hater because listen, I've been in the heat of battle over people talking shit on Brittany, and I don't want to be like that. But come on, like if we were to power rank the 6 main characters, which are the 3 quarterbacks and their 3 spouses, Julie Cousins is coming in last. I'm sorry, but she is, right?
She's a good looking girl, but she is just
I mean, listen, some people, I get it. Like some people like the idea of her going to listen to gospel music because she's stressed out during the game. I
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
want that from my quarterback's
I
wife.
need a
I want my
warrior.
quarterback to be screaming fuck in the
Yeah.
box
Yes.
when, his ankle gets twisted and calling him a dumbass
Yeah.
and screaming at the top of her lungs. Give me that. Give me that energy every single time.
Yes. But however, Marcus Mariota's wife, she was great. Very,
She was great.
very. I think she was a better watch than Mariota as far as how she approached
Oh,
life and how she
100%.
approached the whole situation. I would have gone. I did this as we were watching, but I would have gone. Obviously, Mahomes 1, Brittany 2, Mariota's wife 3, Kirk Cousins 4, Mariota 5, and Kirk Cousins' wife 6. That would have been my
Yep.
power.
Same. Speaking of power rankings, we've got an Ask Ourselves Anything. And this was sort of inspired by our watch of quarterback because there are a lot of players featured in quarterback who are no longer Chiefs, guys that, as we're going through the 2022-2023 season, into the 2023 playoffs and the Chiefs win a Super Bowl, there's a lot of those guys that aren't with us anymore. And I mean, they're still with us
Yeah,
on this
right.
earth.
Sure, I know. I laughed when you said that.
Ooh, thank God for that. But
they're not on the death list.
They are no longer physically Chiefs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so you put together a little list and just asked me to critique it. I just tell me what you have in terms of the guys that you miss most.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you the 10 Chiefs from last year that are no longer Chiefs and my order that I think the team will miss them on the field. Not necessarily anything about, or I guess locker room plays a little bit into it, but this is basically just like an importance ranking. So I've got number 1, and this was kind of tough for me to power rank the first couple, but I think Juan Thornhill, he had 1,044 defensive snaps and was a hell of a football player and was a guy that, obviously was easy to root for and versatile. And the secondary was something that, there are a lot of young players in this Chiefs secondary, and Thornhill now was kind of a grizzled vet at that point and did his job. Didn't really feel like he was a liability out there at all. Made some big plays. So I've got Juan Thornhill ranked 1. I've got Juju 2nd, and I think a lot of that is just that he's a veteran and some of the guys that are replaced him with are so like, I'm excited for Tony. I'm excited for Moore. I'm excited for Rice, but like, I don't know what those guys have at the NFL level. Not really. And I know what Juju produced and 765 snaps on offense, a lot of that out of the slot where the Chiefs were really, really successful throwing to slot receivers and a big guy and a positive guy in the locker room that everybody liked. I think Juju is definitely high on the list and I've got him 2nd. And then I've got Carlos Dunlap 3rd. I think every time he was on the field, it was a positive. It was a net positive. He never got worked over and he provided a lot of pressure. For an old guy, still 572 snaps on defense was a good contribution for him. And, edge rushing, despite bringing in a Menahue and drafting Felix, I still think that Dunlap will be missed. I've got Andrew Wiley, right tackle, 4th, 1,091 snaps at right tackle and 88 more on special teams. And, just a solid contributor on the line. And now while we have 2 new tackles, I'm not really sure about the tackle situation yet. And that goes for number 5 on the list, Orlando Brown. And yeah, I mean, I've been an Orlando Brown critic for a while, and I do think that he played average, but I mean, at this point in the list, it's not like you're talking about superstars anyway. And a left tackle that doesn't get completely worked over all the time is still going to be missed on the roster. He's 5. I've got Frank Clark.
Let me jump
sure.
in here.
You want to do the top 5? All right.
Sure. Yeah. I just want to jump in and critique the top 5.
Yes.
To start off here.
Sure.
I mean, like, I think the top 10 is going to be pretty stock. We'll see who the rest of your 5 guys are, but I think, I might make just a couple of tweaks here. I think just in terms of like purely lost production year over year, like, I don't know. I almost wanted to move Juju up, but I can see number 2 because obviously he dropped off kind of towards the end of the season. He wasn't really ever explosive, but I mean, like he was our 2nd leading receiver last year after Kelsey. So he had almost 1,000 yards. I get that. Carlos Dunlap, I don't know. I mean, I get it. Like,
feel a little high,
a little, but it's hard for me to disagree with that because, like you said, he did play a lot of snaps. He was productive, and I mean, he really did. He did provide a lot off the field and on the sidelines. I mean, like, this is a guy who we brought in, very much in the Terrell Suggs mold, where like, and Terrell Suggs already had one Super Bowl ring when he came to Kansas City, but like bringing in a vet who has that extreme hunger to win one more ring before he goes off, like how often does that actually play out like it did with Carlos Dunlap? And how often should it work out? And the answer is that it did at least 2 times for the Chiefs with Suggs and Carlos Dunlap, and that feels really good. The Wiley Orlando situation, I mean, as a group, like, I don't know, it's tough because we still haven't seen exactly. I mean, we know what the Chiefs' opening day lineup is going to be, barring injury for this unit, but we don't really know. I mean, I think judging how much we're going to miss these 2 guys really depends on what we get from the offensive line this year.
Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor specifically.
Exactly. I think it's going to be, I think it's kind of hard to predict at this point. Obviously, like, Donovan Smith is, his ceiling, his highest level play is higher than Orlando Brown's highest level play. A couple of years ago, he played at a higher level than Orlando Brown has ever hit. Every other season, you could make the argument at least for Orlando, and we just have to see if he's going to be healthy. Obviously, right tackle Juwan Taylor coming in. I'd almost be tempted to move Wiley up just in terms of how he played last year, because he was great last year.
Yeah, he was.
But again, like, just in terms of how much we're going to miss him, we might not miss him at all, because Juwan Taylor could be, I mean, obviously
he's got that dog in him.
He does, and the Chiefs gave him a huge contract. I mean, obviously the Chiefs expect huge things from Juwan. So I don't know. I mean, you kind of already mentioned number 6 on the list is Frank Clark, and that to me is the one where every time you brought up a name, really after the first couple of guys, I kind of was like, well, is he going to say Frank?
Yeah,
and he's the hardest one to rank, right? I mean,
yes.
I almost think like I wouldn't put him number 1, but like I could move Thornhill down maybe a couple spots and move Frank in the top 5 somehow. I don't know who I'd kick out of the top 5 though.
Sure.
Orlando. Yeah, probably, but you could make arguments for him. So why don't you give me the rest of your top 10?
Sure. So as you said, Frank Clark, number 6. I do think that he brought a lot to the table this last year. I think if you had asked me this question at the end of many years in the Frank Clark era, I would have not put him on the list. I think that he was a pretty big disappointment in the regular season most of the time, but he brought it, especially last year, and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and that's fine.
As an aside, can I just say something really quickly? I don't want to give airspace to this. I'm not going to tell you who tweeted this, but there was a Broncos fan comparing Frank Clark's playoff sack totals to Joey Bosa's and Max Crosby's, and it was a Broncos fan, because obviously Frank is a Bronco now. It had the strongest Bengal fan energy of any non-Bengals fan tweet I've ever seen. It was incredible. Man. And I'm sure it was a troll, but like, come on. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not. Have a little self-respect.
Yeah. Number 7 on the list is Colin Saunders. Really going to miss that dude off the field, but on the field, he had a great year. He put up 421 defensive snaps, 54 special team snaps, and 2 offensive snaps when he ran out for passes. And I just really like the guy, really like his attitude, really like his versatility. And I'm very happy for him that he got a bag, but would have loved to have seen him stick around in Kansas City. Yep. And then special teams ace Chris Lemons, I never forget or never remember. 322 special team snaps for Chris, and a guy that teams is going to miss. I mean, that's a big loss, and good coverage guy, really, really solid for Dave Tobe. And so I've got him 8. And then I could have put him higher because that Mecole Hardman and I've got a soft spot for him. I've defended him at times that others didn't. And I was excited to see what he was going to bring to the team when healthy. And he just never got healthy again. And I think that if Mecole Hardman had a healthy year last year, I think not only would he have been extended and still be a Chief, but I think we would have seen a huge year from him. I mean, he really at the beginning of the year was stretching the field and being a big third down target and really stepping into his own. And I think he's going to be a good pickup for the Jets. I think
and contributing in the run game too,
and contributing in the run game. Fast. I mean, not Tyreek fast, but certainly still showed that he's got that elite NFL speed to him. So now I'm talking into this, and even though I slotted him here, I'm going to move him up above Colin Saunders and Chris Lamons, and I'm going to go 7 for McCole Hardman. I'm switching it up already. And then finally, number 10, the Henny Badger. Any given Sunday. I know that there doesn't seem to be a big difference between Chad Henne and who's the Jags guy that they picked up now? Blaine Gabbert, of course, former Missouri Tiger.
Sure, of course. Former Tigers legend.
You know, I just love Chad Henne. I love the contributions that he made to the team in the playoffs. Those were that was a ring-winning drive that he put up against the Jags. And while this is about missing him next year, and while we hope that Patrick Mahomes is going to play every snap and we never even have to talk about the backup quarterback, I tell you, if we do, and Blaine Gabbert comes in there and he's not nails and he doesn't do everything exactly the way you would hope a backup quarterback would, we're all going to talk about how we wish Chad Henne had one more year left in him, because every time he was called upon, he delivered.
Yeah, that's perfect. That was number 10 on the list.
Yeah. Yep.
I would make maybe one swap, and the swap that I would make, I understand Chris Lamons' special teams ace.
Yeah,
I would trade in one of my more maligned Chiefs for Chris Lamons on this list, and it'd be Marcus Kemp. All right, listen, maybe this is a little bit of a legacy pick, because he was the guy that would make the roster every year because Dave Tobe wanted him on the roster. Mm-hmm. But like, when we finally thought we were free of Marcus Kemp, when we needed him most, he showed up in the second half of the AFC Championship game. Obviously had, I think, 1 catch in that game, right? Or did he have 2?
Maybe 2. Definitely played a bigger part than the box score would indicate.
Sure. I mean,
because he was like the only healthy wide receiver. I mean, it was.
Sure. I mean, he was taking major snaps in the second half of that game. Again, I mean, kind of a little bit of a legacy pick. I actually think that his dad may have cussed me out on Twitter one time for me talking shit on Marcus Kemp, but
his dad cussed everybody out on Twitter.
Well,
that was what he did.
I'm not claiming that it was unique to me.
1 catch for 13 yards.
I'm just saying that I was amongst the many people that felt the wrath of Marcus Kemp's dad on Twitter.
Yes.
So I would swap Marcus Kemp and Chris Lamons just as a legacy selection.
His catch was a first down, by the way, on his only target.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
I do remember that. It was a big
third
play.
down conversion.
Yeah, of course, it moved the chains, and some of the other names in this list that obviously did not feature for obvious reasons, and frankly, some of these guys, I'll shout them out, that have like negative value.
Yeah,
we will actively celebrate them being gone. Not Michael Burton, Darius Harris. Darius Harris, he might have made it, snuck in like around 11th for me.
He was fine.
He was fine, and he made a couple of big plays in there. Elijah Lee. We talked about Marcus Kemp, Geron Christian, Brandon Williams, Taylor Stallworth, Rashad Fenton. Now he's kind of the next guy in terms of snap count on here. I mean, he played 313 snaps, and he was off the team by like week 6. They traded him to Atlanta. Yep. So, I mean, that was wild. Matthew Wright and Matt Amendola are 2 backup kickers. See ya. I literally,
although
negative
Matthew
value.
Wright was dope.
Sure. Matthew Wright set a franchise. He held a franchise record for 1 week, right?
Yes.
But
59
Matt Amendola, that guy. Matt
Amendola.
I never need to see that guy again. I mean,
no, and like 7 NFL franchises say the same thing, because he played for them all and sucked for them all.
He lost us the Colts game. Ugo Amadi, Zane Anderson, and Ronald Jones.
Rojo sucked too.
Sure, right. I mean, I don't need to, and he was complaining about not getting playing time too. So it is what it is. He's not going to be missed, but it's a good list. I mean, there's a lot of good men that we lost out there. So it's a new season, but we bid them farewell. And now we close the show out with our Ask Blast from the past. We are rewinding to week 11, 2003. I almost said Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And then I almost said Los Angeles.
Yeah. Who are they?
This was the Oakland Raiders in 2003. The Oakland Raiders traveling to Kansas City to Arrowhead Stadium on Monday Night Football, the rare primetime game for the old Chiefs, the pre-Mahomes Chiefs. And of course, for those of you that remember this game and or are following along with us, last week the Chiefs took their first L. They started the season 9-0. They lose to the Bengals again, only because the turf was bad. Let's just be clear. That's what it was. If we replay the game now with real turf, the Chiefs win that game, and who knows? They probably go 19 or 20-0. They probably win every game, or not 20-0, 19. Yeah, sure. Yep. Back then, 19-0.
They probably would win an extra 20th game in there somehow.
Sure, they probably would. They probably would find a way to win 20 games.
Win their bye week.
They would have won the Lombardi, but it's not to be because the turf was bad. The Chiefs took their first loss of the season, and I just want to ask you before we get into this game how you felt the week after taking the first loss. Now, I know you mentioned last week that like you kind of had a feeling that it was coming at some point, right? Like you didn't think the Chiefs were going to go undefeated. There have been so many close calls, obviously, before they finally did lose to the Bengals because of the turf. How are you feeling after the first loss of the season?
So I had watched every Chiefs game from roughly the first one I remember is when I was 6. And then at this point in 2003, I was 16 and I had seen my fair share in those 10 years. And as you said, and as I pointed out last week, I do remember a distinct feeling of dread going into the Bengals game, not because of the matchup on paper, not because of the Bengals, but just because of what was going on with the Chiefs.
Because
the fact that they were 9-0 and they were the Chiefs, and the Bengals were, frankly, a moribund franchise. They sucked, and that's never fun to put your, perfect season on the line against a team that has no business beating you and then beat you. And Chad Johnson promised it, and then it happened. And, I think if I were to transport myself back then, there was a bit of like relief, maybe. I mean, no, of course I was mad and I was fucking furious about how the game happened and the turf and the fact that the Chiefs went 1 of 11 on third down and blah, 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 blah. But like, there is a sense of just kind of the pressure being off after you lose your first game that far into the season, but it's not the playoffs yet. If they had gone 2007 Patriots and gone 16-0 and then lost a game, there would be no relief there, as Patriots fans will tell you. But I certainly felt like the team was still worthy of my time, and they were exciting, and it was going to be a playoff team. We knew that already. They're sitting there at 9-1 with the best record in the NFL. And so I was just kind of like wondering a little bit about the defense, because even though the Bengals
some cracks.
they were showing some cracks. They were. And the offensive line was fine. Priest was fine. Trent was fine. Like they still had good pieces. But yeah, coming into this game, I felt a little bit of pressure relief from the record, but still was excited about the potential going forward.
So what's interesting about the record, I mean, at 9-1, as you mentioned, the Chiefs still had the best record in the NFL, but they weren't that far clear because there were 3 8-2 teams in the AFC. The Tennessee Titans, somehow, the Colts, and the Patriots were all 8-2. So they were all only a game back in the AFC. And obviously, at this point, the Chiefs hadn't lost any of those teams, hadn't played any of those teams head to head. So, I mean, it was a true 1 game clear from the rest of the AFC, but it was only 1 game clear. Now, on the other hand, the Chiefs were 3 games ahead of the Broncos, who were in second place in the AFC West at 6-4. And the Raiders came into this game 3-7. The Chargers at this point in the season were 2-8. So you knew this team was going to the playoffs. You knew this team was winning the AFC West. And back then, that was an accomplishment. Let's be clear. I mean, this was back when they had fewer AFC West title wins than any team in the division by a pretty wide margin. So it's still an accomplishment. But where did you have any expectations for how the season would end at this point? And had they changed from 9-0?
Well, I think if I'm honest with myself, even as the Chiefs were storming their way through the 9-0 start, I was not envisioning the Super Bowl victory because I didn't know what that was like. I didn't know how to envision.
Of course,
I didn't know it was possible. I didn't know Chiefs fans
could even envision a playoff.
No, correct. And I mean, it's kind of one of those deals where when you're a fan of a snake bitten team, when you're a fan of a team that hasn't gone all the way in the playoffs or even come close to it in your lifetime, you got to kind of try to, if you're sane about it, embrace the ride more than the destination. Because, I mean, if I was honest with myself, gun to my head, when the Chiefs were 9-0, like, no, I would not. I would say they're not going to win the Super Bowl because I've never seen it and because that's just how things go. So no, after the loss, I didn't really have a sky is falling mentality about the end of the year because I never thought that things were going to end happy for the Chiefs because just had been conditioned that way. It was sobering to see them lose because there is a sense of like blessed, like team of destiny type of stuff with some of the ways that they had won these games. And
Sure.
The Hall returns and just the way that the Chiefs have pulled some of these games out, you just kind of, once they lose one, it's like you see the vulnerability and you see the fact that they could lose start right in front of you. And that's no fun. And that's certainly something that now from that point forward, you could just point to that Bengals game as like, see, they could screw up if they're, if things don't go their way. So that's kind of how the vibe I had was that let's kick the Raiders' ass because everyone hated the Raiders. That was still an important game. That would have been an important game if the Chiefs were 1-9 as opposed to 9-1.
Sure,
I mean,
of course.
You definitely still got to take care of business against the Raiders. And speaking of the Raiders, not only do you have to take care of business against them, but you have to take care of business against starting quarterback Rick Mirer. Now,
Who?
Tell me what you know about Rick Mirer.
Literally nothing. Like before we did this exercise for this week, I don't think that I had ever heard the name Rick Mirer before.
Sure.
I mean,
he was a journeyman, 93 to 03, played for Seattle, who he was drafted by, and then Chicago, the Jets, Oakland, and San Francisco before he was out of the league. So he bounced around. What I want to talk about with Rick Mirer is he's on a list with a couple other quarterbacks for a specific reason.
Okay.
The 1971 draft was the first draft of the quarterback because the top three picks were Archie Manning, Jim Plunkett, and Dan Pastriorni. Okay. And those three guys are on a list with Rick Mirer for being the four worst quarterbacks of all time in quarterback rating with attempts over 2,000 yards.
Wow.
So Dan Pastorini, I always screw his name up. Dan Pastorini leads the all-time lowest career passer rating with 59.1. Rick Mirer is 63.5. Archie Manning, 67.1, and Jim Plunkett, 67.5. Now, three of those guys, as I said, were the first three picks in the 1971 draft.
It's crazy.
And everybody knows Archie Manning, obviously, Manning's father, and Jim Plunkett had himself
he won a couple Super Bowls.
Career and won a couple Super Bowls. Yes, he did. He absolutely did. With Oakland, also, this team that Rick Mirer played for. But before I get into Rick Mirer, I dove through Dan Pastorini because I got down the football rabbit hole and wanted to know about this guy who's the only guy in the history with over 2,000 pass attempts that was worse at football at quarterback than Rick Mirer. So I was like, well, I know Rick Mirer was bad, so how bad was Dan Pastorini? Well, let me tell you. Dan Pastorini had in 96 career starts, he had a 56-40 win-loss record, which pretty good. 16 games over 500 for being the worst rating quarterback of all time. And he threw his completion percentage right around 50%. But, that's from 71 to 81. That's not super shocking. 89 touchdowns, 121 interceptions for
not great
rating in those games of 61.7. But since his record is 59.1, that's because I left out 21 games. And those 21 games were a 21 loss streak in his career, where he started 21 straight games and his teams took an L in every one of those games. And in those games, from October 72 to October 74, he was 0-21. He was 267 of 503 passing for 53%. 2,700 yards, 9 touchdowns, 27 interceptions, 52.5 quarterback rating in those 21 games. So while in the rest of his career, outside of that stretch, he was 16 games over 500 and actually was fine. I mean, he wasn't great, obviously, but like those 21 games will define his entire career and make it so that when you look up worst quarterback ratings of all time, you will see Dan Pastorini number 1 in his career because
crazy.
Just a shook. He was also a punter, like during that stretch too. He
sure.
84 times. So like maybe part of it's just that he was used to giving up and giving the ball away and
sure.
Know, punter mentality and quarterback mentality. I don't
no
meshing, right? So that's Dan Pastorini. Rick Mirer was also drafted very high. So remember, those 3 guys were drafted 1, 2, and 3 in 71. Rick Mirer was picked 2nd overall in 1993. Woo! Yes. So the Seahawks thought that.
Do you have that in front of you?
I don't know, but let's look at the 1993 NFL draft because that'll be an easy search. And that will be 1993, number 1, Drew Bledsoe to the New England Patriots. So, and Garrison Hurst went 3rd and Marvin Jones went 4th. And that's not Marvin Jones Jr., that is Marvin Jones Sr. But those guys all had Pro Bowl careers. And so Rick Mirer was picked 2nd out of Notre Dame, starting quarterback for Notre Dame, and just floundered around in Seattle. He went 20-31 in his 51 starts there in 4 years before they jettisoned him. Spent 1 year in Chicago where he went 0-3 as mostly a backup. 1 year with the Jets where he went 2-4, and then comes to Oakland. Rich Gannon gets hurt. He basically just gets shoved in. So when he plays in 2003 in this season, he hadn't played an NFL snap since 2000. He had been on rosters and backing up and stuff, but had not gotten in a game for 3 years before he had to come in for an injured Rich Gannon in 2003. So, I mean, the Raiders knew what was happening. Rick Mirer was not gonna win any jobs or anything like that. But
and again, I mean, at this point, their season's over. I mean, they had
it's cooked. They lost their MVP and they're coming off a Super Bowl loss the year before where their coach changed sides and then told their other team all their plays. Like just the Raiders had just an awful end to 2002 and then it extended through the rest of eternity. So
couldn't happen to a nicer team.
Couldn't happen to a nicer group of players or coaches or front office personnel. So that was Rick Mirer. He's coming into this game. They already they already kind of knew this was not his first start with the team. He had started against the Lions, the Jets, and the Vikings before playing the Chiefs and had lost the Lions and Jets game, but then somehow beat the Minnesota Vikings 28-18 the week before they played the Chiefs. And Rick Mirer, who sucks, only went 9 of 13 in that game for 195 yards with no touchdowns or picks. So anyway, that's Rick Mirer. That's who the Chiefs were facing as a starting quarterback. And when Rick Mirer is the Oakland Raiders starting quarterback, you got to beat him. You got to beat that guy.
And fortunately, the Chiefs, spoiler alert, would beat him. But let's talk about the game here because, I mean, this ended up being wild. And we're going to talk mostly about the end of this game. But just a note here, this is the 27th straight game the Chiefs played with the same 5 starting offensive line, which is wild. Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. Consistent. Could not even conceive what the NFL record is. It's probably much higher than that. But I mean, if we're talking about,
it can't be that much higher.
Well, sure. I mean,
guys get hurt all the time.
Sure, right. I mean, it's and guys underperform. I mean, to have an entire unit, an entire line comprised of the same guys. I mean, that's almost 2 full seasons worth of games where you haven't made a single change in the offensive line.
And I haven't looked, but they continue to do this. I mean, this is the 25th in this game, but I didn't see how far it was until Rofe, Waters, Tate, Wigman, and Shields weren't the 5 for the Chiefs, but had to have been sometime late in 04, I think. So just a monster unit they had.
You had a note about Priest Holmes in this game.
They just watching the game back, the first 4 catches that Priest Holmes has in this game all come in the first quarter, and they are all road graded by the offensive line out on the edge, and he gains a total of 87 yards in 4 catches. So he's going at about a 20-yard clip per catch, 22-yard per clip, and just looks like the Raiders didn't even know the Chiefs had a guy named Priest Holmes like before these plays. Like it just He was doing
how could
whatever
you know
he
him?
wanted.
He's just,
And I do note here that for the rest of the game, after those 87 yards in the first quarter, they target him 5 more times, only catches 2 of them for 13 yards on a 0-yard catch and a 13-yard catch. So the Raiders did finally get together and say, hey, we didn't scout this guy correctly. We got to actually tackle him and cover him and stop him. So he still had a great day, and especially on the ground. But those 87 of his 100 yards for this game came in the first quarter on 4 catches. It's wild.
Yeah, and so the first quarter the Chiefs dominated this game. They go up 14-0 after two touchdown drives. The first one to Derek Blaylock on a little, not end around, but like a sweep off to the side.
Yep.
Dick Vermeil loving to run side to side. East to west and not north to south. But it works out. Priest had a 36-yard completion there, and Derek Blaylock with a 25-yard touchdown run. Second drive of the game, Priest Holmes gets the touchdown. Again, a 11-yard completion, 22-yard completion to Priest. Derek Blaylock with a couple of big runs in there, and then Priest rams it in for the touchdown, and the Chiefs are up 14-0 in this game. And obviously the Chiefs are coming off a heartbreaking loss. You don't know how they're going to hold up mentally, but going up 14-0 against the Rick Meyer led Oakland Raiders seems like a pretty good place to be.
It does. It seemed like they came out pissed off. It was a 3-15 start at Arrowhead against their division rival that had sucked this year. And, good teams bounce back from heartbreaking losses. Bad teams let them compile and let them, build on each other, and you can't start to do that. And the Chiefs certainly didn't do that. They also had a 4th down stop on defense between those 2 touchdowns. So they were coming out on both sides of the ball. They were pushing the Raiders around a little bit. The second quarter starts, teams trade a couple punts. I will note here, 3rd and 8 with 9:37 left in the second quarter. We get our dreaded dash on the play-by-play, which had confounded us earlier on in the season.
It did.
I fortunately had the entire game tape of this one and not just the highlights, and was able to go find that exact play. And it's a sack by the deceased Arcal Trueluck. Not deceased at the time, obviously, but he did come up with a sack that does show up in the box score for a sack for him. But in the play-by-play, it just says dash, and the Raiders lost 4 yards on 3rd down that no one would know unless they watched the game that was when Arcal Trueluck sacked Rick Meyer. So, Pro Football Reference, get your play-by-play together, boys. That's it's inexcusable when you have tape. Inexcusable. Then the Chiefs punt. Then finally, the Raiders show some life after they were down 14-0. Rick Meyer goes up the middle for 13 yards on a quarterback scramble touchdown, and the Raiders cut the lead in half. But as 2003 Chiefs did a lot, especially early on, they answered a score with a score. Twitter's favorite tight end Jason Dunn catches a 2-yard pass from Trent Green after a drive where the Chiefs converted on 3rd and 10 to Eddie Kennison for 20, and then basically just bing, bang, boom down the field. And Jason Dunn goes up, puts the Chiefs up 21-7 right before half. Rick Meyer kneels the ball. Feeling pretty good with a 14-point lead at half against Rick Meyer, aren't you?
Sure, of course. But the Raiders come out with the ball on the first drive of the third quarter, and they go down and score a touchdown. Tyrone Wheatley with a 15-yarder comes in and scores. It's now, a 7-point game. Chiefs do answer with a field goal. And then late in this game, at the start of the fourth quarter, this is where we'll kind of pick this back up. Jerry Rice for 47 yards. His first touchdown of the season. Huh. This is the 41-year-old Jerry Rice. He would go on to score one other time. And I mean, listen, he had 869 receiving yards this year. It's not like he was doing nothing. I mean, he's still Jerry fucking Rice. He was second team All-Pro and a Pro Bowler the year before. The year before, he had 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. Yep. This was his first touchdown of the year, and it was a 47-yarder. I mean,
in game number 11.
How do you let a 41-year-old man, even Jerry Rice, score on almost a 50-yard touchdown? So
by Rick Meyer.
By Rick Meyer, exactly. Sebastian Janikowski, a longtime Raider, kicks the extra point, and it's a 3-point game. Sebastian Janikowski, by the way, drafted in 2000. Famously a first round pick. They took him 17th overall. So this was his fourth season. And obviously he played for the Raiders for a long time. So it's a 3-point game, and it's a 3-point game with the entire fourth quarter left to play. This one got so weird.
So the Chiefs first, with 10 minutes to go at the Oakland 34 in a windy night in Arrowhead, would have had a 51-yard attempt, but they decide to go for it on 4th and 2. Trent Green misses Omar Easy. He was kind of covered. It was kind of just a broken throwaway, bad fourth and 2 play. And the Raiders take over, down 3 points with Rick Meyer at the helm. So the Raiders had to be feeling good about that. No, they immediately punt back to the Chiefs with 7 minutes to go. And then, yeah, like you said, after this next drive, things start to get weird because the Chiefs get the ball with 7.5 to go. They kind of piddle around with it for a little bit. They only get out. Leckler pinned them back to the 8. They pushed that out to the 26. They punt it back to the Raiders. There's an unsportsmanlike conduct on returner Phillip Buchanan. So instead of returning the ball 27 yards, which basically would have put him in the Chiefs 26, he gets a 15-yard penalty after that, backs him up to the Chiefs 41. And then the Raiders kind of fart around from there. They end up going for, on 3rd and 15, it's incomplete to Tim Brown. And with 2:26 to go in a 3-point game, Sebastian Janikowski ties the game up with a 41-yard field goal. And we're just getting started.
Yeah, so Janikowski kicks off. We do get a little appearance from Dante Hall, who's had a quiet couple of weeks,
no touchdowns. Come on, bro.
from that towards start of the year, a 29-yard return. So the Chiefs have the ball, great field position with 2:10 left in this game. They have the ball 1st and 10 at their own 45. I mean, you certainly are in a situation where you would think the Chiefs would just want to grind this clock down and kick a field goal and end the game. And you would think that with their road grading offensive line that's played 27 games in a row, that they would do that, but they don't. They pass the ball 4 straight times, and it's complete 4 straight times. 5 yards to Mark Boerichter, 8 yards to Tony Gonzalez, 13 yards to Priest Holmes. You mentioned his only big catch of the second half. He had one other one for
0.
nothing, basically. Yeah, for 0 yards. And then Dante Hall shows up, 6-yarder a 6-yard pass. And the Chiefs are now down at the Oakland 29 with 1:13 left. I mean, 29, that's a 36-yard
23 after the Dante catch.
Sure, exactly. After the Dante catch. The 23, that's a 40-yard field goal. I mean, you're talking about an relatively easy field goal. I mean, certainly even though he's 46 years old, a Hall of Famer, and Morton Anderson.
He hit a 41-yarder earlier this game. I mean, yeah.
Yes. This is where it gets really funky and crazy. Now, you mentioned it's a windy day, but the Chiefs have just thrown the ball 4 straight times in a tie game where they're trying to burn clock and take the ball down and kick a field goal. Priest Holmes gets the ball on 2nd down. He gets stuffed. It's 3rd and 4. We get a pass to Tony Gonzalez. It's incomplete, but there's an offensive pass interference, and it knocks the Chiefs back 10 yards. So this goes from being you're in a position where you could almost take a knee. I mean, 30 seconds on this Tony Gonzalez play and kick a field goal and feel pretty confident. Yeah, feel pretty confident.
He was so mad at this call too. So basically from the TV, which, you don't get a great look in 2003 at anything. You basically can't tell what teams are on the field. But
of course,
it shows Tony coming back for this catch wide open on his own. And it's because when he turns around at the top of his route, a Raider was engaged with him with the Raiders' hands on Tony's shoulder pads, both of them. And Tony just turns around, doesn't engage back with the Raider, doesn't do anything, just turns around, catches this ball for a 1st down, and he's called for OPI. I mean, I remember this call. I remember it because it didn't make any sense. I thought I didn't know what offensive pass interference was. I thought he did something before that, or some type of, maybe he said something and that's called pass interference instead. I don't know. It was infuriating. Dick Vermeil's chewing gum really hard over on the sideline, trying to figure out, if he knows what day it is. And it just, it was an infuriating call. It was one of those calls late in a Chiefs Raiders game that just for some reason always goes against the Chiefs. Like, as much as the Raiders are this like NFL hates us, like screw up all the time. Like, I can think of 10 games against the Raiders where I just feel like at the end of the game, the refs were like, fuck the Chiefs. Like, it just drives me nuts. So, yes. So Tony gets called for an OPI there that really pushes back. The difference between a 40 and a 50 is massive. It is.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about Morten Andersen on a windy night in October at Arrowhead. It's knocking you, back to a 50-yarder, 3rd and 14. So the Chiefs still have a chance to convert this. There's now 25 seconds left in the game. The Raiders have, by the way, not used any of their timeouts, which is also crazy. Like, you're on a 2-minute drill and you're not trying to stop the clock.
No.
In a tie game.
No.
Like, what
2003. They just had no idea.
Sure. What were the Raiders doing? So the Chiefs take a time, or the Chiefs run a play, and the play goes to Johnny Morton. And this is a dart from Trent Green. This is one of the best balls he's thrown all season. And Johnny Morton just fucking doesn't catch the ball.
It's a 23-yard pass on 3rd and 14. Down to the 10. Johnny slides down. The ball hits him between the numbers. Just absolute dime by Trent with no one around. And Johnny just slides and the ball just hits him in the chest and falls incomplete. And like, look, I love every Chief that's ever chiefed for the most part. But like, Johnny Morton drove me
2003 nuts. Johnny Morton's really testing our patience.
Testing our patience. And this was one where you just can't drop that ball. You just cannot screw that up, and he did, and that's up.
So now the situation with the Chiefs is they're on the 33, which is a 50-yard attempt, and it's 4th and 14. And listening to the broadcast, the broadcasters were adamant that Morten Andersen was not kicking a 50-yarder. He attempted
warming up. Yeah,
he attempted one field goal over 50 yards this season, and he missed it. And
it was exactly 50. That one that
it was exactly 50. And listen, this was not unusual. The previous year, he had attempted 1 and he made it. The year before that, he had attempted 5 and he made 2. This is
50s are tough.
Especially in the early 2000s. Kickers were real crude. And even Morten Andersen, future Hall of Famer, he wasn't going to hit it. They said he wasn't anywhere close in practice, and there just was apparently no consideration of kicking the field goal here. But you're on the Oakland 33, and your options are kick a field goal. If you miss it, they get the ball there. Or you're going for it on 4th and 14. And if you don't make it, they're getting the ball there. Now, there's only 19 seconds left, but they do have 2 timeouts left.
And a big leg kicker.
Inexplicably, they haven't been calling timeouts. And they have, at the time, probably the biggest leg in the NFL.
And the best wide receiver of all time.
And the best wide receiver of all time, albeit in his 40s. But he had already roasted the Chiefs secondary in this game for a 50-yard touchdown bomb. So the Chiefs go for it. And who else but the local hero, Mark Boerichter, for 16 yards. This is a great play. They throw it essentially right at the sticks. He ends up getting 16 yards, getting a couple of extra yards, but he goes straight to the sticks. Trent Green gets him the ball right at the sticks, and Mark Boerichter gets the ball down to the 17, and that sets up the game winner.
Yeah, it was a perfect timing route by those two. Boerichter only had 1 catch in this game, and it was on this drive. The first pass of the drive went to Mark Boerichter for 5, and then this one for 16, and that was his only contributions. But, they were obviously massive. A 4th and 14 from the 33 to get down to the 17 is just something that I would love to sometime run the numbers and see how many people have attempted such a play. I just don't know. I don't know if I would have done it any different. I don't know if I would have punted.
That's your other option, right?
That's really your other option. And
that's playing for overtime
from the 33, especially if you get a touchback, if you try and pin them deep or whatever, and you get into the end zone, you actually are only netting 13 yards on 4th and 14. Like, you didn't even get to the sticks that you're trying to get to if you punt it like that. But you pin them deep. They've got a backup quarterback. It's at home. You would then go to a coin toss. Who's to say that the Raiders won't just win the coin toss and get 2 first downs in 2003, kick a game-winning field goal? You never see the field. It's overtime is a crazy thing that they used to do with the coin toss and the field goal. without
sudden
even
death field goal,
without
yeah. No, I
the
mean, it's
touchdown.
absurd.
I get, like it's you at least drove the whole length of the field, but
It's
like
also insane that like for many years that wasn't an obviously broken system. Like
yeah, they just went with it.
teams didn't win 100% of the time when they won the coin toss in overtime because offensive football was just so crude. But Morton Anderson is true from 35. He bangs it through. The Chiefs are 10-1. The Raiders fall to 3-8. I mean, this was a good, strong team win. Let's do our awards. I neglected to explain our award system last week, which that's my bad. I didn't write it
Meant that
down.
I couldn't do any audio drops.
I Ron Burgundied it, but this week I'll explain it. We have 3 awards. They're Always Sunny themed, like many aspects of our show. First one's the 5-star man. Five-star man! Oh, 5-star man! Who, of course, screams by his play, I'm a 5-star man. That's gotta be, it just has to be Priest Holmes in this game. 191 awesome. Total yards in this game, including 100 yards receiving and a touchdown here. Set up another couple of scores through his hard running. I mean, he was a beast.
Yeah, he was everywhere, and he just is so damn versatile. It's crazy that a 30 touch for 191 yard performance is just pretty average for him this year. Now, an average Priest performance is worthy of 5 stars every week. He was as productive of a running back as there's ever been in the NFL for this stretch. And I mean that literally. Like he just put up numbers. That's all he did every single week. The Chiefs used him a lot, but even when they, it wasn't just 3 yards in a cloud of dust with Priest. Like he danced, he dazzled. He had catches out of the backfield that looked like he was the fastest player on the field. I mean, he was everywhere. And watching this game was another one of those where he just stands out. He stands out in a time that a lot of those players, especially Gonzalez and the offensive line, like those are Hall of Famers. Like there are great football players on the field when he's playing, and you still feel like, damn, that Priest Holmes, he's a head and shoulders above everybody else right now. So good call for sure for him as a 5-star man.
Second award, trash man.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
It's fairly self-explanatory. These are the players who, through their play, are literally eating garbage on the field. And I will give you the floor to nominate a trash man.
Johnny Morton, come on down. You're the next contestant and always the contestant on It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom's Trash Man, because he's just so weird in this season. He just is so.
We just shouted him out last week. He had his best game of the year.
Yes, he did. And that's something where when you look at his total box score for the 2003 season and he compiles 740 yards receiving, you're like, all right, 4 touchdowns, like that's a wide receiver 2 level of play, especially in 2003. It's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, on the Chiefs with Tony Gonzalez and Kennison, and obviously they're running the ball quite a bit. I mean, it's good production.
But you look a little deeper, and he had 50 catches on 92 targets, so he was almost a 50% catch rate, which I know he's an outside receiver, and like they're not supposed to have super high catch percentage like that, but like it just felt like so many of his box score numbers were 1 catch and 7 targets or 1 catch and 6 targets or something.
Sure.
This game, buddy. 2 targets. 0 receptions, 0 yards. His worst game as a Chief. Just
and that's a bad game before you take into account the situation. The fact that
one of those 2 targets.
Yeah. The fact that one of those goose eggs was on a perfect dart of a play that would have been a first down and set up the game-winning field goal. I mean, you win the game if you make that catch, and he should have made that catch, and he didn't make it. That's a trash man worthy performance.
That's trash.
Sure.
Big time.
I'm going to let you nominate the wild card as well. And for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with the wild card is quite simply just capable of anything.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Tell me your nomination for our wild card for week 11, 2003.
So this might be one of the, if I were to guess, this is probably in a list of the last 10 times the name Arkal Trueluck is ever uttered in the history of mankind. And
R.I.P.
R.I.P. to Arkal Trueluck. He was gone too soon. He's on our death list. Certainly a sad story there, but he is as we explained earlier, he picks up a sack in this game that was so monumental that the play-by-play data could not even record it. Just gave him dash on the old play-by-play data. So Arcal Trulak, we salute you. We salute you being capable of anything, including a sack so great that they didn't know how to record it, and pour one out for our boy.
It's always sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. See y'all next week.